David asks, nice to meet you, David. He asked, I'd like to know more about your top image quadrant model, resource build, measure, learn. I like the arrowheads, instrument, insights, and orient. Could you talk us through your thinking of that illustration? So here's the illustration that David was referring to. And the motivation for this illustration is that I've seen many examples of people do build, measure, learn loops, right? And you see this a lot. I've seen this in a bunch of places. But what I realized there is that there's something that kind of happens after learning, right? And that's figuring out what to do with your learning, trying to filter it down into some prioritization or initiative or next step, and then building from that. So I try to focus in on some small things about this here. There's some subtle things, but you mentioned these kind of arrowheads between these sections. So after kind of prioritizing or doing whatever, there is this effort to kind of orient the folks involved in building or designing. And after building and designing, you need to think about how you have to kind of instrument what you've done to be able to measure it. And we can get a lot of data, but sometimes to learn, we actually need insights, right? We need to make sense of all that data to be able to learn. And so that was the motivation behind these little arrowheads, so that you would go from filter, you have to filter your learning, you have to orient the team to build, you need to instrument what you build to be able to measure, and you need to derive insights from what you measure to what you learn. So that was the motivation for these arrows. And these little arrows that say far from work, close to work, what that meant is that if you can imagine that, let's say a team has all the people necessary sitting in a room to make these types of decisions and to do this type of work, you'll notice that some folks are very close, so they're very close together, and some people are very far from the problem. So I didn't do a great job in that, but that was what I was trying to get across there, which is, individuals who are close together and far. So for example, you have teams that do build, measure, and learn, and are very, very effective at that, but the actual decision to plan or prioritize is very far from the work. Another great example is a team that builds and measures, but the team that actually kind of gets the insights together is very far from the work. So that was the subtle thing around these little arrows that say far and close. You'll notice also there's two little lines that say respond and sense and respond and sense on the, at the ends of the x-axis. And that's basically to divide this into there's this idea of sense and respond. And if you think about it, sensing has a lot to do with measuring and learning, and responding has to do with perhaps how we resource things and prioritize things, and then how we build them. So that's another aspect of this. But the real goal here was to address this issue that I see with a lot of teams where they'll look at lean startup or they'll look at the general statement, build, measure, and learn, and it intellectually seems to make a lot of sense, but they'll complain about something missing. What's missing? And I think in my case, what's missing a lot of times is that if you think of this as a Kanban board, right? If you think of your tickets being in each of these quadrants, what you would find is that building is not the blocker, although we think it is, right? Teams will build. They might even measure, but really the blockers are in the learn, the lower left-hand corner, and the resource plan and prioritize about what's next in the upper left-hand corner. So what will happen is that the team doesn't have the autonomy to go through the full loop and re-inject their work. They'll work on a quote-unquote project, and they'll learn something from it, but someone else will have decided to plan something to drop on that team as their next effort. That is the inspiration for this. Sorry, I've been getting a lot of slacks in the middle of work because I'm, this is my day job I also have to do. But that was what I was trying to get here, is to try to say, where is your blocker, and where is the actual work happening, and then also to look very closely at how you're planning and prioritizing and initiating, because that often that and the learning are separated out from the team, so you can't really move through this cycle as quickly as you'd like. All right, thanks a lot.